On the air and streaming on the web since 1996, this is the Cinematic Sound Radio Network.
Come down, sparrow, sing me good morning. Rise up, sun, light the arch of the sky. Weaving river, turn light to diamonds. When I look in my true love's eyes, young as any spring, his eyes almost sing.
Welcome to another edition of Soundtrack Alley here on the Cinematic Sound Radio Network. I'm Erik Woods. I'm filling in for Randy Andrews. And on the program today, we're going to be talking about the 1985 Ridley Scott directed film Legend, which featured two original scores, one by Jerry Goldsmith and another written by Tangerine Dream. And we're going to be talking about both scores and analyzing specific cues against each other to see how they relate to one another, what their similarities are, and what their differences are. And my guests today include David Coscina, Jason Drury, and Robert Daniels. So sit back, kick up your feet, and relax as Soundtrack Alley on the Cinematic Sound Radio Network begins now. I'm Erik Woods, and welcome to another episode of Soundtrack Alley here on the Cinematic Sound Radio Podcast Network. I'm filling in for Randy Andrews today. Randy is normally the host of this show, yet he didn't want anything to do with this episode, so he gave his blessing that I could host and moderate this special episode of Soundtrack Alley. This program focuses on one specific film and its score. And today we're talking about the 1985 Ridley Scott directed fantasy adventure film Legend, starring Tom Cruise, Mia Sara, Tim Curry. The film revolves around Jack, played by Cruise, who must stop the Lord of Darkness, played by Curry, who plots to cover the world with eternal darkness. With me today are three members of the Cinematic Sound Radio Network. First, from Ramsgate in Kent, England, he's the producer of the brilliant three-part radio documentary, The Life and Music of James Horner. He's also the host and producer of The Archive here on the Cinematic Sound Radio Network. Jason Drury.
Good. Hello there. It's good to be on the show.
Great to have you, Jason. Second, we have our brilliant in-house composer with us. He is also the host of Composer Conversations here on the network from Milton, Ontario, David Coscina.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Great. I'm good. Great to have you here.
Glad to be here.
And last but certainly not least, we have a fellow soundtrack radio host who produces his own soundtrack program, Visions in Sound, on FM 98.5 CKWR here in Kitchener, Ontario. The show actually eclipsed its 1,000th episode back in December of 2019. He is also the host of Obscure Scores here on the Cinematic Sound Radio Network. He's also a very good friend of mine. Please welcome Robert Daniels.
Hello, Eric. Glad to be here.
I'm glad you're here as well. So are we all ready to talk about Legend?
Let's go.
Indeed.
All right. So first of all, took some convincing, huh, Jason?
Yes, twist his arm.
Well, Jason, you know what? Let's start with you. When did you first see the film, and what did you think of it?
Well, I first heard of the film when I walked into a record shop in Ramsgate, I think in 1985, and I saw an album that says Legend, the music of Jerry Goldsmith. and it was a vinyl LP, and I thought, this is interesting. So a couple of weeks later, I actually bought it, and I listened to it, and I thought, this is fantastic. This is amazing music. Then a few years later, the Silver Screen Extended Edition came out, and I thought, this is fantastic. I really, really enjoyed it. Hadn't seen the film yet, though. I only saw the film finally, like 4 years ago. I think I got it for Christmas. My partner gave me the DVD for Christmas. It was like the Blu-ray for Christmas, and I was, well, my first reaction to the film was it was very. I enjoyed it. I saw often it was a Ridley Scott film, and the way it was, the sound quality, the sounds, the Foley sounded very Ridley Scottish in its approach, and I think I've noticed on the Blu-rays it's the only films that's had 2 disclaimers. There was a disclaimer at the front of the director's cut, and also a disclaimer on the theatrical release. But even though the quality, it was a slightly different quality of the Blu-ray transfer, the film itself, it was well worth the wait. It's a great film. It's been a very interesting weekend for me. I have listened to music from Lord of the Rings for Rob's show this week, and I've also now listened to music for the Legend, and it's been sort of fantasy has been a really big fantasy weekend for me in that respect. But as far as the film, I saw the film a couple of times. I saw it with the Ridley Scott commentary as well. Found it absolutely fascinating, as always in all Ridley Scott films he does a commentary for. It's always fascinating for him to talk about it. And as far as the film itself does, it's both films. The production design is absolutely amazing. There's it really, every time it does stand out, it's absolutely stunning. Sometimes you can't even believe it's all done mostly on the 007 soundstage. It has a nice place in my heart, and really mainly because of first of all the music, and I think I've heard the soundtrack and the score like so many times. It's untrue, but I've seen the film now, and it has its critics, but it's got a nice place in my heart these days. Legend is a film I think I should go back to a lot more often than I do. I think this week has been the first time for a few years now since I've seen it, but it was well worth it, but particularly the director's cut.
Robert, before we get your thoughts on the film, can you introduce us to your cat?
He was here. Gimli is. Oh, come on. Come here, buddy.
He's your partner in crime, right?
Yeah, he is. He sits in on a lot of the COVID stuff that I've been doing from time to time. So yeah, Gimli is the cat. You may hear him from time to time. He likes
Yes.
he likes to think that I'm talking to him. So there's that.
He's your co-host.
Yes,
Yeah,
in a
he
lot
is.
of cases. And he is a bit of a legend himself. I'll just say that.
Well, he's a fantastic host. So yeah, if you hear him in the background, that's who it is. So, Robert, tell us, when did you first see the movie and what did you think?
I completely missed it in the theater. It was 85. I wasn't into... I just basically wasn't going to movies at that point. At least in the theater. So the first time I saw it was probably 1988, maybe 89, when it was on pay TV. Used to be like First Choice Super Channel here in Canada, and that's where I first saw it. And it wasn't the UK version, which is what it became known to, at least in my mind. It was the theatrical version, and it was just, that was the one that I saw. I really appreciated the design. First of all, the design of darkness, and just the score stuck with me. First of all, I'd never heard of Tim Curry. I'd never heard of Tangerine Dream, and I only knew Tom Cruise from Top Gun. So it was like, okay, what is this that I'm looking at here? And I was just again blown away by the look of the film. Later to find out that it wasn't shot outdoors, that a majority of it was shot in the 007 studio. I was just like, holy crap! And then I was wondering how they did the Una character, that floating light. I mean, it makes sense now that I know what they were doing, but at that time it was like, this stuff just kind of blew me away. Again, going back to the score, it was the only thing that I knew. The Brian Ferry song at the end was kind of a sort of semi-favorite.
Is your love strong enough? Like a rock in the sea. Am I asking too much? Is your love strong enough?
I had looked for it everywhere because I was just starting to get into soundtrack collecting. So I was pulling in just about anything and everything that I could find. So I finally found a vinyl version of the score on MCA, and it's got great artwork on it. But it was the most expensive soundtrack purchase I had made at that time. I've made many more since then, but anyway, the thing is that it was just a great to hold in my hands, great to listen to, and for me, it was just one of those scores that I appreciated it, but it wasn't necessarily one of my favorites, because there was also other stuff that was coming out on with Tangerine Dream. There was Firestarter and a couple of others that kind of stuck with me, but Legend was kind of really not on my radar until much later on, when I was watching the film on video. I had recorded it off of TV and started getting into the whole idea of, what was the story behind this film, and what influences it. It definitely comes through, that you can see. I mean, there's obviously some Lord of the Rings influence, Beauty and the Beast, just a whole bunch of different influences on this film. To find out in, I think it had to have been the 90s, I'm not sure, maybe mid 90s, that there was actually a second version of this film. I think that was kind of the rise of the Laserdisc at that point. So you would get two versions of a film sometimes on a Laserdisc, or on a set of Laserdiscs. So to hear, like I said, that there was a second film, I was like, okay, well, what am I missing out of the from the first film? First film's 90 minutes. It's compact, it's quick, it's bang, it's done. It's completely different. And I watched it again this morning. And watching it again this morning, I'm like, okay, there are certain parts of the film that I'm like, okay, that needed to stay in there. That needed to stay in there. Why they removed that, and that sort of thing. My take on it is very simple. They were coming off of probably the success of the soundtrack to Ghostbusters, so they probably wanted something that was huge, pop song for the kids, something like that. So something they could play on the radio. And My True Love's Eyes was just not the kind of thing that, I mean, today it would be Rihanna doing a remix of it now, or something like that. But I mean, back then,
no. please now.
But now, I mean, having the adding of the pop song and poor John Anderson and his basically, I think he's singing. At that points, he seemed like he was screaming the lyrics. I mean, that's just when I heard it again this morning in the mix of the film, he's just like right at the top of his must be at the top of his range, because it's just I won't say it's ear splitting, but it must have been really hard on his voice to sing that. So yeah, that's my take on the Tangerine Dream score. I appreciate it for what it was. I didn't realize that there was a Jerry Goldsmith score until much later. I didn't get it until much, much later, so I didn't have a chance to hear it. And now hearing it, it is my preferred choice for the score. Again, but going back to the whole idea of that there is a bit of nostalgia when I hear the Tangerine Dream stuff.
TV-wise over here in the United Kingdom, I think it's been shown on the BBC a couple of times, but only the theatrical release with the Tangerine Dream score. The Jerry Goldsmith legend has not been shown on terrestrial television here yet, even though it's been shown on, I think, on one of the stations. And I think I did catch it once before I got the Blu-ray. I thought, oh, this looks really interesting. They've got Legend with Jerry Goldsmith's music on it. This would be great to have. That's why I really, really wanted it myself, to have a proper look at it and really analyse the score as finally with the visuals. And I wasn't disappointed, as I say.
Yeah, I was like I said, just absolutely blown away that the fact that there was a Jerry Goldsmith score to this, and so to hear that after all the time, it was like listening to it was like rewatching the film, a brand new cut of the film for the first time, and it was like, this is so much better. Why did Scott decide to do what he did with, I mean, poor Jerry Goldsmith working on Alien, which there are parallels in the film to Alien. There's a couple of things that caught me was and spoilers for those that are want to watch the film later on. There's the ending reminds me very much of Alien, where the alien's holding on to something, and I'm not making a monologue about light, but there's still that parallel in the visuals. There was stuff in there that stuck out with me in Blade Runner as well, just the way it was shot, and the so many close-ups of Mia Sara's face that reminded me a lot of shots of Ripley from the from the '79 Alien. So this is I think maybe a young filmmaker trying to make a voice, and then hearing or expressing his voice, and then suddenly realizing that, oh, the higher ups, from what I've read, it was pot smoking viewers of the original cut that kind of scared Scott into rejigging the film and changing the score. I mean, it reminds me a little bit of Troy as well, where you have the old-timey score, as I think it was referred to as. And Goldsmith's, the more I hear it, no, it does not fit under that. It actually has a very interesting... I was surprised to hear the electronic components in it, and yet it still, for some reason, was changed. I don't understand that.
Yeah, Ridley Scott gets trampled on quite a bit, especially on his earlier films, and Sidney Sheinberg was the major culprit at for the change of the American version. I think he was the one that even was doing all the editing as well of that new version. So like Scott was just kind of left out in the cold, and he had no say in what was going on with the American version. So the European version did get favorable reviews, but Scheinberg thought, hey, we've got to market this to a more youthful audience, and that's pretty much the reason for the change in music, because he thought that the music was going to save his film. David, tell us what you think about the movie and when you first saw the film.
Apparently, I'm the only one that actually saw it in the theaters, first run. Yeah, I saw it in 1985 when I was 17 years old. Interesting story is that was the exact same year that I got interested in synthesizers. So at that time, I was actually more into Tangerine Dream than I was into Jerry Goldsmith, but I did know that there was a Jerry Goldsmith score because the first keyboard magazine issue I ever bought was Daryl Hall was on the cover, Suzanne Ciani was interviewed, and also part 2 of Jerry Goldsmith's conversation with, I think it was Jim Eichen or Bob Durstcheck, and he was talking about this project he was working on at the time, which was Legend. And he talked a bit about Under Fire and working with Pat Metheny as well. It was around the same time. So he was very excited about what he was going to bring to the score. But I wasn't as cognizant of his work at the time. I had been years earlier as a soundtrack collector, because I started collecting soundtracks in 1977, when I was a kid, or I was begging my parents to buy soundtracks for me. I didn't have a job then. But the Tangerine Dream score was part of the allure for me to actually see it in the theater. I was less Tom Cruise, because Tom Cruise really wasn't a very successful marquee draw at the time. He was a sort of a side player to things like The Outsiders, Taps, things like that. He wasn't actually. It was not until Legend, well, probably Top Gun, which sort of catapulted him, if I remember. So it was the music that drew me to wanting to see the film. It was the fact that it was Ridley Scott, because I was a huge fan of Alien and Blade Runner. It was Rob Bottin. My best friend at the time was huge into practical effects, makeup, and worshipped the ground that Rob Bottin walked on, and we both were fans of The Thing. So all those factors were sort of a no-brainer for us to want to go see it first run. Didn't see it in a great theater. I think it was like a Cineplex, which, seated 14 people. The screen was probably smaller than some people's homes now, or their theaters in their homes. But I have to say, even at the time, it was very mixed bag. We loved, the friend of mine and I, we both walked out, loved the set design, the look of it. But even as 17-year-olds with less taste in movies than I would say I have now, the script was clunky, the casting was not really great, and I was disappointed in the score. By that time, I think I had 22 albums of Tangerine Dream, right from their early 70s work, like Rubicon, Phaedra, so early soundtracks like Sorcerer. Thief was my first soundtrack that I got of theirs, and then it just opened the floodgates. Poland, Tangram, and I love their work. I know that contemporaries of mine say, "Oh, you just, you don't like anything that's too new or too electronic." It's like, no, that's quite the straw man, because I was more into electronic music back then than I was into orchestral. That was when I discovered electronic music. But I think I found even at the time that it was kind of a hodgepodge. There was a lot of stuff that just seemed literally thrown at the canvas, and it sounded like they were praying that it would work. So I found the music in the film experience distracting, not connected, and there'd certainly been enough films that I'd seen up to that point which had amazing scores and that did really work organically with the characters and the atmosphere and the narrative. So I walked away from it thinking, geez, I wonder what that Jerry Goldsmith score is like. Now, unlike Jason and Rob, I wasn't cognizant that a score was ever released, or a cut was ever released in overseas, because we had no internet back then, and I liked collecting trade magazines like Cinescape and Starlog and all that, but I don't think there was ever a mention about an alternate version. It wasn't until I got into university and I hung out with the film guys, because I was obviously trying to become a film composer. So, and one of my director friends said there was a bootleg videotape that he had of the European cut. So one night in residence, we all watched it, and I was thinking, I was blown away by the score. I was like, Jesus, this thing's amazing. And at that time, I was, first or second year university in music studies, and I immediately heard the comparisons of Ravel and Stravinsky, a lot of the stage works, that kind of expansive sound in that other score from Goldsmith, and even the cut seemed a little bit more even. It seemed a little more digestible.
Yep.
And things like even Darkness, it seemed to have a better context, and definitely more of a portent because of the music that accompanied. And it still baffles me when I see comments where you'll see on YouTube where there's like a scene which is scored by Tangerine Dream, and then the same scene scored by Drury Goldsmith, and people say, oh yeah, no, the Tangerine Dream is like dark and moody, and Goldsmith's is too sweet. It's like, I don't know what you're listening to, but I don't think that's even close to correct. And it's funny, Keyboard Magazine ran a very short blurb with Tangerine Dream after Goldsmith had gotten ejected. And it was a small thing, but they said, quote, we respect Jerry Goldsmith a lot, but we didn't feel this score was not to our taste either. It was a little too sweet. So I don't really, if anything, their score is a little too tame. It's a little too ambivalent, and it really doesn't connect at all with anything that's going on narratively or atmospherically. It's subpar for that group, and they did great things. I mean, they've done some great scores, so it's really nothing against them. And from what I understand, they were up against the gun to kind of throw it together. And just refreshing my knowledge of a little bit of the background, I read that they weren't even aware that John Anderson came in with sung over one of their pieces. Like, they weren't aware of that. So a pop song was made out of their Unicorns cue, and they didn't know it.
I have seen the mystics play there once or twice. Well, I knew they had a reason. Enchantment plays its cards all right, hand in hand with the workings of the seasons. Legends can be now and forever, teaching us to love for goodness sake. Legends can be now and forever, loved by the sun, loved by the sun, loved. Two and two go so.
Yeah, so sort of it was a whole screw job on all levels for both sets of composers. But I didn't hate the film at the time. I think when I first saw it with the Tangerine Dream score, I bought the album, and the album had that really cool cover with Darkness on it. But I rarely played it. And when I finally had a chance to get the Silva Screen score in 1993, I picked it up at an HMV. Interestingly enough, I picked up Ravel's Daphne and Chloe at the same time. I didn't even know that there was the similarities, but that was my favorite score of the summer. The only other score that summer that probably commanded the same amount of replays was Jurassic Park by John Williams. So it was a great discovery. You know, it was a fantastic discovery of this amazing. I mean, this wasn't a score that was a subpar Jerry Goldsmith score.
No.
This was pure gold. The amount of work he put into it, the architecture, the development of the themes, the breadth of the themes, the sophistication in orchestration. It would have been a crime if that had never been released. And I actually want to ask Jason one thing, because I read about this, so Jason, you said that there was an actual soundtrack for the Goldsmith score back in the 80s.
It was, yes, and
Okay.
the distributing company wasn't Universal. It was Fox, 20th Century Fox, because I remember 20th Century Fox logo on there. And it was his album. If you look on some sites, you can actually see the album cover. It had a picture of Darkness, Tom Curry, who was like the main poster boy for the film. And it was like 10 tracks, 5 each side. They were out of order. I didn't know what the proper order was of the tracks until the Silver Screen release came out. But even so, it was an album that I played regularly on vinyl. It was absolutely joyous. And once the fullish score came out from Silver Screen, it really confirmed to me that this score, if it was released and it was part of the American release, I have absolutely no doubt whatsoever that Jerry Goldsmith would have received an Academy Award nomination for it, or some awards, because it is one of his best scores ever.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned Jerry Goldsmith's score being sweet, David. And
I can't figure that out.
But the funny thing is, though, that Ridley Scott set out to make a family-friendly film with this movie because of the dark atmosphere in Alien and Blade Runner, and he wanted to try something different. And so it was him all along that wanted to create something quote-unquote sweet. It's interesting that is the label that, Jerry Goldsmith's score gets. Meanwhile, that's pretty much what Ridley Scott wanted. But I still don't think sweet is the right word.
I think it's
to
refined.
describe it.
I think it's a refined score. It's lyrical in a lot of places. Maybe that's an adjective that most people don't necessarily grab or reach for, but that's how I would characterize it. It's not vicious like Alien or Planet of the Apes. Even as dark as some of it can get, it's still fairly tonal, and it's not, as aggressive as Goldsmith could be. So.
Yeah. So before we go more into, unless you want to say something, Jason.
He's quite aggressive on the Darkness Falls cue, I thought, and also the scene for the fairy dance, which was the lead scene in the film. It's the most violent dance I think I've ever heard in film music history, and it would have been great to actually have that in the film. But it's as it is. It's one of his greatest scores. I don't call it sweet. It's just lyrical. It's just so you can listen to it, and particularly some of the cues we're going to talk about in the show. You can just close your eyes and you don't need the visuals of the film. It's just pure beauty in the music.
Yeah, it plays like a tone poem. In fact, I was telling Eric this, and I maintain this. If Goldsmith had lived long enough and had ever a desire to adapt anything to concert works, he could have made this a ballet, and they could have staged it, because it doesn't have that many different sets. There's maybe 4 or 5, and any ballet company production company that would be easy for them to do. I think it would be amazing to just have dance or choreography and have the music, because it really is, the music comes across as a stage work, like Stravinsky's Firebird or Daphne and Chloe from Ravel or Bartok's Wooden Prince. It's very very evocative music. Like you said, Jason, you don't need to see the movie to understand what's going on narratively.
Agreed.
It's also to be the closest thing Goldsmith ever did to writing a musical, with the lyrics of John Bettis important to the plot of the film, or particularly the director's cut of the film and the dress waltz, you can see even in the theatrical version, they are not dancing to the music of Tangerine Dream. They are dancing to the music of Jerry Goldsmith. And when you see that scene, it is one of the most beautiful dance sequences I think in any of the films Jerry Goldsmith. Well, only one of the few dance sequences he composed for, but it is absolutely wonderful to watch visually as well as listening to the music. And I think we've also got to credit here the great orchestrations of the great Alexander Courage for this, because he was really, I think he's got to be really part of the credit of producing this great score for Judrick.
I thought it was Morton orchestrated Legend.
It's Alexander Courage did all of it. It wasn't.
Oh, really?
It wasn't. Yeah. I think it was one of the first that he did for Jerry Goldsmith. I think. Well, the first time he was a full-time orchestra for Goldsmith. I think at the time he was like they were alternating between Ralph Morton and Courage, and after when Morton retired, Courage took over until his retirement in 2000.
Okay.
That was one of the things that jumped out at me when I saw it this morning. Was Alexander Courage did the orchestration for this. And I mean, normally most people would let that go right over their head, but for me, it's like, oh, okay. So yeah, it wasn't Morton this time around. One of the things, and I took some I won't say copious notes, but I took some notes, and the Goldsmith score being called Sweet, I don't see it. The Tangerine Dream score seems very intrusive. Now that I've seen or heard both films back to back, it's almost as if it's not meant to be there. And now that I know what has happened, it kind of wasn't meant to be there in the first place. But Sweet would not be what I call. I mean, I'd say that if anything, whimsical in certain spots would be the better word for it. I wrote that Goldsmith plays the dread so much better in this. With that scene with Mia, Sara, and Darkness, or Lily and Darkness, at the dinner table, it's just this. Whoa! You're like
that is disturbing. It is a disturbing scene. David and I were talking about this yesterday, and it still sends shivers down my body. It just makes my skin crawl, and it's nothing explicit. It is the way Lily is dressed, though, but it's also the way that Tim Curry is looking at her and the way that he's talking and his movements and the cinematography of Alex Thompson. It is creepy.
Yeah.
And to make it even more creepy, Mia Sara herself was only 15 at the time.
Yeah. It's something else.
Yeah. The one thing that jumped out at me as well is that Curry's performance was coming through that makeup, despite how much makeup they put on him. Just the voice and the performance. I mean, one of my favorite lines in the director's cut is this: "We're all damn."
You disgust me. You're nothing but an animal.
We are all animals, my lady. Most are too afraid to see it.
Damn you!
We are all of us damned, my queen.
He just absolutely nails the Darkness character, and in fact, I remember hearing on the director's commentary that as Ridley Scott puts it, that Curry really thought he was the bee's knees when he was completely dressed up in the Darkness getup. But yeah, I don't see where they got Sweet. I mean, Sweet, yeah, maybe with My True Love's Eyes, but
that's part of that's part of it. I mean, that's part of the character. And back to Tim Curry for a minute. It was 5.5 hours in makeup to get that on there. And
that was the best scene in the whole movie, though. I mean, that's the one that everybody remembers, right? Is the scene with him and Lily.
And you know what? I would love to have seen more of him, but I think that saving him for when he does appear in full, I think is absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Made a huge impression, right?
At the start of the theatrical version, you actually do see him like in black. You can see it definitely he's there, but you don't see him in full.
No, it's just his arm. Just his arm.
Yeah. but you do see him. In the theatrical version, you actually see him sitting in the chair at the start of the film. He's dark. He's darker. He's not red, but he's definitely. You can see it's an outline. It's definitely him in the chair. In the director's cut, you don't see him at all. You just see that picture that's outside and the night sky. And you just hear his voice. And his voice is really sets up the movie so well. But you only see him. The poster boy of the film only appears like towards the last third, the last act and a half of the film. You actually do see him in its full glory. And when you do see him, particularly in that scene with me and Sara, he chews up the scenery so much. You just can't resist watching him on screen. He just takes over the entire film when he turns up finally, and it's absolutely sensational. And I can see why. I think at the time Ridley Scott never heard of Tim Curry until somebody pointed to him about a performance in the Rocky Horror Show and how outrageous he was, and said that's the guy we need for this. And you can see it's one of the great castings of somebody for that role, and he really just took it over and made it his own, and it's still one of his most memorable roles to this day. We've got to talk about Meg Mugglebones' appearances and the comparison between the two cuts.
Oh,
geez,
he's barely
in the theatrical version. He says, "I'm here," and then he gets killed off. But in the second, he gets a much more of a scene in the. You actually see properly the performance of Robert Bacaro in the director's cut, because he has a really good scene with Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Picardo has a long history with Rob Bottin as well, because he was in The Howling. He was in Inner Space.
Yeah.
Yes.
He was in Total Recall.
Yeah.
Oh,
he must have gotten used to being made. Yeah. He was Johnny Cat.
He was Johnny Cat.
Yeah.
Get ready for a surprise.
Yeah. So yeah, he was in a lot of stuff that Rob Bottin worked on.
Does anyone know how long Tangerine Dream was given? For
3 weeks.
Three weeks? It shows. That's all I'll say.
And I think
Goldsmith
it was
had 3 months.
He was reluctant to do it. I think he was, as I said, Sid Hamburg forced Scott on to doing it and getting another score. It was he was himself who edited to the theatrical version, because he desperately wanted some control over the film still. But there's a very poignant thing at the end of the documentary. He said, having Tangerine, he should have, after that fateful press screening with everybody on pots, which caught everyone laughing, he should have, that's why he became paranoid. He said, in hindsight, he should have stuck to his guns and brought out the film he wanted, which was the director's cut we've got now. Right. He should have, in hindsight, he should have kept Jerry Goldsmith's score on there and not been pressured and influenced by that press screening.
Well, how many films did he have under his belt at that point? It was
his fourth film: the Judas, Alien, and Blade Runner. This is his fourth.
Yeah. So still sort of the young filmmaker.
Yeah, no, he was very. He knew what he was doing. The guy was a commercial filmmaker, but the problem is that he got run over on Alien by Terry Rawlings, and then you have Blade Runner, which was just an absolute colossal failure when it came out. So I mean, you're obviously going to be under the gun to do something right for Legend, and it's just like, if it doesn't work for your producer or whomever, they're just gonna say, hey, well, yeah, remember you made Blade Runner, so this is not working for us, and we're gonna take it over. And I mean, it wasn't until we talked about this yesterday, David, like Thelma and Louise, where finally it was like, oh, here's a bona fide
commercial and critical success.
Yeah. So
when was Labyrinth out, by the way?
86. That was 86. That was the following year.
And then Cole was out in 83.
83.
I don't know. It didn't. You know what? It's a little bit of an odd choice that they would have done this, because I wouldn't say that the film world or film fandom was really into big kind of fantasy stuff. He had Excalibur in 81,
shot by the same guy too.
Yeah, exactly. Alex Thompson. Yep. So I don't know if maybe that was part. It was more of like a fairy tale, but from the liner notes I was reading, I mean, originally it was written really dark. Like there was some pretty risque stuff in there, which they had to tame. It is, as we were saying, Eric, it just feels like half of a film. It doesn't feel like you have a lot of context for character motivations or even story motivations. It's sort of like you've jumped in the middle of a movie. It's like
that's exactly the problem I had watching it, and I have only seen it, for the first time last month, both versions. So I don't know what I was expecting. I didn't expect it to be that messy. And so, but I also didn't expect it to be that confusing. And just like where it started was, you're right, like in the middle of some other film where we weren't introduced to characters and we had no idea what the relationships were. And we somehow needed to understand that ourselves, even though we don't know what kind of world we're in here. And I mean, the basic story I understand, but Lily running around in the fields and going to the house and then all of a sudden meeting up with Jack, like what is the relationship between them? And then why is going to see the unicorn so forbidden? That was never explained. And then it just became an utter mess.
It would have been better if they'd established, Lily trying to get Jack's trust and then becoming immersed in his world over time, even if you have to do a montage or something.
Yes. It's also what's really bizarre about this movie is just how small it feels. Even though it
needed a bigger budget.
It's not so much that. It's just, especially when you see something like Lord of the Rings that came out 15 years later, how expansive that world is. This is a similar type of movie where it just feels like we are in these tiny areas and not really able to explore the world that just seems so magical, and the incredible production design. It comes through, but I just feel like even the amount of characters that are in it, there's only like 6 or 7. Like there's 3 goblins that are trying to find Lily and Jack instead of like a whole army. It just seems like it's so very small.
And there's one guy fast asleep in the cottage. You don't even see him in the vertical cut.
Yeah.
I don't mind the fact that there's not many goblins, because my sense was that darkness had been banished, right? He was trying to get back a dominance in the world, so he only had limited resources. That didn't bother me, but I totally agree with your point that it's a very myopic story. It seems like it's missing a lot of again, more of the landscape, and then that's unfortunately a feature of being relegated to sets, whereas Lord of the Rings, it was also a big long commercial for, hey, come to New Zealand and enjoy the grand vistas. They didn't have that advantage, so we're going to be limited.
Apparently the original script had a lot more people involved, a lot more extras involved in the script, but the script was loved by everybody, but I said if you filmed this script it would cost like $400 million, so they had to tone it down.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but they wanted to film everything within the studio, and they didn't want to go outside. They didn't want to do anything else. They wanted to do everything indoors, but then they were forced to film. The lighting burns down the studio, the 007 stage.
Well, it was the lighting. They wanted to film apparently in Yosemite Park. That's what Scott was thinking of, but he couldn't. But the lighting would have been very difficult for him to light properly the way he wanted it. So that's why he wanted control. That's why he ended up on the 007 stage, because he had to control the lighting of it. And it's great.
It's gorgeous, but again, it just feels so. Again, claustrophobic isn't the word I'm looking for, but it just feels like it's crushed. We're only in a very, very small part of this universe, where I think just seeing a bit, like that last shot at the end of the director's cut is just so beautiful, and it just seems so expansive. And I'm like, where is this world in the rest of the film? And of course, when we first see the unicorns, some of the best cinematography I've ever seen, and just magical practical effects to make me believe that, yeah, oh my God, there are 2 unicorns. And it doesn't seem to be too difficult, but to get the horses to do what they got them to do, I mean, they're a character amongst themselves, and it's so wonderfully done. And of course, the beautiful cinematography by Alex Thompson, who worked on Excalibur, Alien 3, Black Beauty, Labyrinth, some of those films we brought up today. So those are the things that I liked about it, but it just felt like a complete and utter mess. And of course, the American version was even more messy. It was just a strange movie with a really strange history.
The theatrical version seemed to cut out the first part of the film, which was set up in the director's cut wonderfully by Goldsmith's music. Because his music kind of sets up the whole what's going to happen. And he's describing in his music that something really bad is going to happen soon. It's all sorts of lovely and sweet with my true love's eyes. And when you get to the unicorn, so you know something bad is going to happen, something tragic is going to happen. It's going to cause the plot to move forward. You don't get that in the theatrical cut. They're trying to rush to the unicorn section very, very quickly, and there's a lot of good stuff they just miss out in that opening section of the film.
Well, one of the things for me, and I wrote this down as well, was the editing was just all over the place for the theatrical cut, and I even wrote down my neck was broken in one edit. It goes from, I can't remember the precise, but it goes from one location to the other one, and I'm like, what happened in between there? In one edit, it just goes from this one location to the other, and I'm like, my neck got broken in that cut. Yeah. Holy crap! And
in the director's cut, there's a very weird edit. It's like a twisty. The last time I saw an edit like that was on Star Trek, on Mirror Mirror, when you see the bad Kirk changed into the good Kirk on the alternate universe. It's like a twisty cut. You only see that sort of thing on television.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. Yes, you're right. Now that I think about it, you're right. That was the only kind of weird transition, right? It was so odd, and it was in an odd place too.
And it stood like a sore thumb as well to me. It just jarred.
Yeah, what a weird. Any other thoughts on the film itself, guys?
There's in the director's cut, there's a scene where I write down Gump, and then I go Gollum at the same time when it's like he's basically thrashing around on the ground, and I'm like, wait a second, is this what? Because this is also the same year that The Black Cauldron came out, the Disney film, which also has a character that's very similar to Gollum. So I'm thinking, is this Ridley Scott trying to do his Lord of the Rings, or his push towards that? I don't know.
David, any last thoughts on the film?
I think I remember liking the Robert Picardo scene too.
Oh my goodness,
darkness.
yes.
That was about the only time that I had a sense that there was imminent danger. Everything else seemed so lackadaisical because the score and just the tempo and the editing just didn't seem like there was really any real danger to anything that was happening to the characters. That was one of the only parts that I thought, and even then, I think it was almost sort of played off a little too kind of tongue-in-cheek. It was the practical effects were amazing.
Yeah.
So that's about it. Aside from that,
but reading for the article cut, look, Picario barely has any screen time. He's there saying, "Yeah, I'm about to E-tune." That's it. He's gone. He gets a much better scene in the director's cut. You can actually see fully the performance he did. So. He really was shortchanged on the theatrical version because he's barely up. Well, blink and you miss him.
Mm-hmm.
So would you watch the movie again, just on your own, Robert?
I have it on DVD, so I can. But like I said, the last time I watched it, or I've mentioned to you guys earlier, anyway. The last time I watched it has probably been like 15 years. So would I watch it again now that I've seen it both films back to back? I'd be more likely to watch the director's cut than the theatrical cut.
Jason?
I'm the same as Robert. I would rather watch the director's cut because it's a far better representation of the script and the material than the the theatrical version, which is probably still be shown on terrestrial television many times, and I'll just avoid it because that's not the cut I want to see. I want to see the cut with the Jerry Goldsmith score, and that is the director's cut, and the film works far better with Jerry Goldsmith's music than Tangerine Dreams. No, just a bit of Tangerine Dream.
No, I would watch it. I mean, I'm glad I have the Blu-ray. I don't regret buying it because I think just for the music and the visuals, it's not bad. I mean, I can forgive some of the other stuff, but it's nice to see those two elements really in full form, and then of course the Tim Curry character. So everything else is, once in a while I throw it on, and it's good. It's entertaining and enjoyable for what it is.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna watch it again, and if I do, I'd have to do it by myself. I think my wife wanted to divorce me while I was watching it because she kept on turning her head and goes, "What the hell are you watching? What is this? This is really terrible." But I mean, it does look beautiful, and someone mentioned that if this was like a French abstract film, it probably would be much more successful. Just a series of images, because it is a beautiful looking movie. And I mean, all of Ridley Scott's films always look just gorgeous, but it's not enough to bring me back to it. However, we are now going to talk about the score, and I think that's something that, especially Jerry Goldsmith's score, is something that we can always return to time and time again. All right, now let's get into the score portion of the show. And during this portion, we are going to compare, contrast at least 3 out of the 4 cues with Goldsmith's cue and then Tangerine Dream's cue, which will be a kind of an interesting exercise. But I want to focus on first Jerry Goldsmith's music because I think it's absolutely brilliant. And what some people might not know is that he actually began working on the score during pre-production. He was writing songs, and he wrote that brilliant waltz that would have to be choreographed for the dress waltz sequence. For me, Goldsmith's score is just rich, lyrically beautiful, dazzling orchestrations, distinctive, quirky electronics that add a wonderful layer of color to the score. As I said, it's a masterpiece, and I think when I was talking to David yesterday about the score and how I'd kind of rank it amongst Goldsmith's best efforts, and if this makes any sense to you guys, for me, this score just kind of stands on its own. I can't place it above any other Goldsmith score. I can't place it below any other Goldsmith score. It just kind of belongs on its own mantle. It's its own thing. Every time I listen to the score, I'm discovering new things, hearing new things, hearing a hint of a theme in one track only to hear it come to fruition in the next track. And I'm sure we're all going to learn a lot from David and his analysis of the score later on in this program. Because, even going over the score with David yesterday, I was learning stuff about the score that I hadn't noticed before. Legend, for me, is one of Goldsmith's greatest curiosities. It's one that keeps offering more and more every time you experience it. And having just experienced it in context only a few months ago, I now have a deeper appreciation for what Goldsmith did. This score, in my opinion, should be studied, analyzed, dissected to uncover more of its secrets. And for those that don't own the score, well, I mean, you get this wonderful analysis of the score in the film in the liner notes of the expanded album on Silver Screen Records from liner note writer Paul Andrew McLean. It's fantastic. And, honestly, I wish this would get a proper book, a whole book on the film and the score, kind of like what the Lord of the Rings got. But, this film isn't the Lord of the Rings, so that's never going to happen. So, but I think it's a Goldsmith masterpiece that just stands on its own. Jason, what do you think?
And another, I adhere to what you just said. Everything there I entirely agree with, but it's also a very important score in Jerry Goldsmith's career because it's the first time he worked with Mike Ross Trevor. And he was only there originally to record the dances, like the dress waltz and the fairy dance. And Goldsmith loved the working on in CBS, because originally also the guy who was supposed to do the recording score was Alan Snelling. And Goldsmith liked what Mike Ross was doing, and he said, I'll use you for the entire score, and started this roughly 15-year relationship they had. When Jerry Goldsmith came to the UK, he worked more or less most of the time on CBS Studios and with Mike Ross Trevor. This roundabout, even though he wasn't working on the actual film itself, he would be like Total Recall. He'd be using his studio and he'd be around there. So they had a very good relationship with Mike Ross, and the score itself, it's what a good score to start a career with Jerry Goldsmith was for Mike Ross, because it is the most lyrical, the most beautiful, the most wonderfully lyrical sort of score I've heard in years. Particularly when I first heard it, and I've listened to it I think at least 3 or 4 times a year ever since. It's a score I always go back to because of, as I said, it's sheer beauty. And as I said to a lot of times, a lot of people, a great film score is one you can have the visuals in your head with the music. You don't need to see the film. And I had not seen the film for 4 years ago, but I still had the visuals in my head, thanks really to the silver screen notes and the music and the music. I could actually see. I probably had seen the film before I actually saw the film. If you get what I'm meaning. There's an important. I think there's one of the cues we're not going to mention, but I think I'll mention it now, which I think is shows what a great composer Jerry Goldsmith was, and it's the cue "Forgive Me" when in the scene when Tom Cruise with Jack goes to see the stricken unicorn, and he apologizes for what happened. He thinks he's responsible, and then you suddenly see the other unicorn come in. He's angry, and you can hear in the music as soon as he comes in, like the Jerry Goldsmith score gets very harsh and dark, and a lot of brass there, showing that this horse is not in a happy mood. But you get that in the music, not from any conversation, any dialogue. The music is the dialogue in that scene, and it shows what a superb composer Jerry Goldsmith was. There's not many composers around today or then who could have done that sort of scene and scored it as well as Jerry did on that occasion. It shows what a master composer he was, and he was perfect for the film, and it was and it was good. I think the reason Goldsmith did this film, considering all the aggro he had with Alien, was because he loved the script, and he scored the film because of the quality of that script. A lot of great Goldsmith scores. He scores not just the final product, he scores a good script, and he scored that script so well. And as I said, it's one, in my opinion, like with Erik, it's one of his greatest scores. I think it's probably off his top 5 in his career. And as I said, if it was properly on the film, probably in the United States, I have absolutely no doubt he would have won awards for it. Even maybe probably a second Academy Award.
Yeah, before we get anybody else's opinion, and I agree with you, Jason, you brought up Mike Ross Trevor, and he's an unsung hero on this project. And it's not just because of the recording. It's because when producer James Fitzpatrick wanted to release the expanded edition of the score, they couldn't find the album masters. And it was only because of Mike Ross Trevor that they were able to release the score, because he had stored a set of 2-track digital tapes from the original sessions, mixed down from the 8-track, which he knew would be worth preserving. Now, these were complete takes. There were no edits done. So, I mean, there was a lot of work in recreating the tracks, but without Mike Ross Trevor and, his forethought to keep a good copy of this score, this one would have been lost forever. Robert, your opinion on Jerry Goldsmith's score?
You guys have covered it. I can honestly say I would echo anything that you guys have said about Jerry Goldsmith's score. One thing that does strike me, though, is the fact that Jerry Goldsmith, it's a shame that he's no longer with us, because he could teach composers today how to score certain scenes in such an amazingly subtle, and then at times will just absolutely hit you over the head and go bam, and it's just this happens in a lot of cases of Goldsmith of that era. And I go back to The Final Conflict. I had recently heard that again, and listening to it on headphones is a pretty amazing experience, because it weaves in and out and that sort of thing. That's what Legend kind of does here as well, is it weaves itself throughout the film, and it really just, it hits the right moments, and when it has to be bold, it's bold. When it has to sit back, it sits back. And that was, for me, that's the brilliance of Jerry Goldsmith, is that he has that kind of that sense to really that makes the score work. And in films that may not necessarily have been the best in the entire world.
There's an old saying, Jerry Goldsmith scored the movie the directors wished that they made or hoped that they would make.
Yeah,
not the films that they ended up with in a lot of times. So, I mean, Final Conflict's a perfect example. He scored that, it was like it was the greatest movie ever.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously,
absolutely.
The Second Coming is going to be one of the best cues ever. And really, they're looking at some really crappy, 1980s Commodore 64 computer graphics.
Yeah.
You know, let's look, the stars align, but it was brilliant. I mean, and that was something that followed him around for his entire career, whether it was a brilliant movie or whether it was really not a very good movie. But he was, the work ethic and the creative and the artistic just fiber of him and his work ethic. He wouldn't write down if the movie was less than what he thought it deserved. He always wrote the best music he possibly could, or he found inspiration in some of these films. I think Legend, probably the point that he came into it, had so much promise, and it was so evocative that the music was the result. He was inspired by the story before it went through all those numbers of edits and what it was mangled so much. So what we're hearing is a very pure sense of Legend, and I think it does the best job in portraying what that whole idea was supposed to be about. It crystallized it in terms of the music content.
Precisely. And it always amazes me, and Eric alluded to this. Every time you hear it, you hear something different. You hear something that you go, oh, okay, that's something I hadn't quite caught before, or whether it's a series of notes, whether it's a theme that reoccurs, it's always a new discovery, at least for me, when it comes to Legend.
Can I ask you guys something, if I can play this on the piano? Because Eric and I were talking about this yesterday, and I'm not quite sure what this theme would be. It's the That's right in the first, actually the beginning of the unicorn cue. But you hear it throughout the score in various guises, and I don't know if it represents Jack or Jack and Lily and their, because I would think my true loves would be what symbolizes their love for each other, and that other theme or motif seems more something associated with Jack.
I think it's Jack, because I think you see that sort of notes at the start of the cue when he appears out of nowhere in a more brassy, more heroic version, but he uses that, I think, because Jack was, he wants to be heroic, but he's reluctant to be heroic. But is that I think you probably see that piece of music appear when you see Jack on the on screen, of Tom Cruise on screen, being concerned about what Lily is doing with the unicorns. He doesn't want. He keeps telling her not to touch the unicorn. And so I feel like it could be more related to maybe also hints of Jack and Lily's relationship, how he really does, he's very fond of her in more or less as he loves her, and he really doesn't want her to have any harm done to her or her to cause harm accidentally, which was what happens. So I think, considering that it also appears that piece of music also appears at the end in the ring, at the end of the cue of the ring. If you go toward the end of the film, when he gets the ring out of the water, and he goes up and tries to free her from the spell. To me, it could well be the Jack, and maybe a hint of the Jack-Lily relationship is in that small motif.
So, David, if you want to do us a favor, and I'm not sure whether this is correct or not, but does that theme then, or does the Jack the Champion theme, is that a variation of what you just played? Can you play those both back to back, and are they at all similar?
No, it's not really. That's from the Armor.
So is Jack has a Jack theme, but then that transforms. Yeah. Oh, it doesn't transform. He just gets a new Jack the Champion theme. Yeah, in the Armor. That's. I think I prefer calling it like the Sword theme or the Destiny theme, because that's sort of that's where because the. See that chromatic thing? It sounds almost kind of like Goofy. Like it's clumsy, not goofy, yes. Clumsy. Like he's this young, kind of inexperienced, kind of innocent, and that having that kind of chromatic is kind of gives you that. It's not that kind of firm. Those are very, very, to drop it down an octave. That's much more commanding. And doesn't that kind of heroic motif that plays also when Lily strikes the sword against the chain armor to free the unicorn, right? Mm-hmm.
So that's definitely signifies more of both characters' resolve to defeating darkness. Whereas that the opening, and that again comes across in a few different places, it's still presented more as a heroic but a very it's not the same resolve. It's kind of an uncertain or an untested heroic motif.
He's reluctant to be a hero. I don't think he's
very much. He's forced to be a hero.
We want a hero. So where can we find him? He said, "You're it.
You'll do."
Oh,
yeah, because
right.
he's an innocent, and I think that's, Eric and I were joking, saying, maybe they should have cast the cast of Ferris Bueller in the entire thing. I mean, you can actually almost see Matthew Broderick in that role, because he's supposed to be untested and uncertain now, and maybe physical attribute wise he wouldn't, he's not like Tom Cruise, which was a good thing for being a forest kind of dweller. He used to be athletic and whatnot, but he has to have that kind of naivete, purity, and he wasn't predisposed to being this kind of like kick-ass Conan type character. That was never his kind of thing. That was like, casting Arnold Schwarzenegger in the role of Quaid for Total Recall. It's like, well, okay, that's not a surprise when he wipes out all those guys, although in the book it was kind of the same thing. Casting is so crucial. So I think Goldsmith basically took the essence of the Jack character and imbued it with that a little bit of that uncertainty, that the not straight heroic component until later on.
I don't know how you were when you were 15, but you were pretty clumsy. I was pretty clumsy when I was 15. So that's gold. Well, yeah, not much has changed. The thing is that that's probably what Goldsmith was going for, and in a very subtle way, which he is a brilliant master at, to throw that clumsiness in there, and whether or not you pick it up the first time, your brain does.
Yeah, tonally speaking, it's so it's just, those are those two chords. It's a flat 6 chord to a tonic, but you've got that minor, that minor to major, and that. Yeah, and by the way, I wasn't saying that in a disparaging manner. I think it's perfectly contextual to establishing this character very much up front. This is the motif or the theme that accompanies Jack when we first see him. It's like, oh, he's got the brass playing it, so it's heroic, timbrally speaking, but melodically and harmonically, it's a little off. It's like, oh, you're not quite sure of yourself, aren't you?
So, before we go into more detail about this unicorn cue, David, I do want to ask you, or even Jason and Rob can jump in here. Goldsmith wasn't necessarily known as a leitmotivic composer, and even in the liner notes, I think they're hesitant to say that this is a leitmotivic score. What are your thoughts?
I think that's an overused term or analysis. I don't see this as being leitmotivic like Wagner's Ring or even Williams' Star Wars. I think there's themes that are associated. There's some motifs, like you've got that sort of kind of ornamental figure for the disgusting goblins. Which again is off-putting to some listeners. They don't like that DX7 brassy blah, but I think it's perfect. It works perfectly in the context of the storyline, that the score. No, I don't think Goldsmith kind of brings them up in the same literal or the functional way that a leitmotivic score necessarily would do. I think there's some associations with themes, but he's not like stopping and then necessarily recapitulating an idea just because there's a character on screen or there's a motif, a narrative motif that's that needs to be scored that way. I think and that's probably why no one really talks about it in this way, because I don't think it is.
So since Goldsmith usually, will compose, one major theme for the film, and then he will pick that apart and maybe use parts for another character or whatever. I mean, is there a legend main theme?
I think that there's elements that he carries throughout the film. So, and it's more of, I would say, sophisticated harmony that is pervasive. So something like the unicorn theme, or that there's two actually, but so that suspension there, and he does this a lot in various themes where there's these. So there's another one. He's got on Lily's song, My True Love's Eyes. He's doing what sometimes we call a slash chord. So it's one chord over a different pedal note, which is not part of the chord. So you're getting these expansive harmonies where you've got much more than just basic triads. That's basically a triad, and then you got this richness in the harmonies, which I think it's throughout. It's woven throughout the score and throughout the different themes. That's one sort of element that I see recurring. He's got this kind of expansive harmony idea. And the other thing too about the interesting thing about doing these suspensions is that it creates, sort of this ambiguity, because I don't think he ever saw this film necessarily as archetypal, like you've got pure good and pure bad. You've got these temptations in the characters that are basically good, but they're not perfect, and they have the ability to be turned. I think even the way they characterize darkness, I wouldn't say he's just this completely one-dimensional, as much as he didn't have a lot of time on screen, but I think because of the amazing richness of Curry's acting, he imbued the character with a lot more levels, and I think that's something that Goldsmith's score really embodies, is this harmonic sophistication, which underscores the character's sophistication as far as not falling into archetypal, I'm just pure good, I'm just pure bad.
I think it's one of Goldsmith's most complex scores. I think, as David said, there's a lot more motifs in this score than the usual J. Goldsmith score. Usually, when I see Goldsmith, he has one main theme, maybe as a secondary theme he uses for action, and usually maybe a theme for maybe the villain of the film. And that's usually what the Goldsmith formula has been. But this one, to me, when I listen to it, is far more complex and more, the motif has got its themes. There's the main theme. There's sub themes, different sections of the film. It's a far more complicated and interesting mix of musical motifs in this film than a lot of Goldsmith scores before that or since.
I'm gonna disagree a little bit. I would say definitely for post Total Recall, I'm gonna say yes, that's pretty much on the mark. I think Goldsmith's seminal scores of the 60s and 70s, though, were probably so complicated that most people didn't grasp the architecture, because he would do these great set pieces, which on surface seemed really amazing and exciting, and didn't seem to necessarily have a lot of connectivity to his central themes. But something like Papillon has just as many themes as Legend, and different figures and recurring motifs. It's just that it's not necessarily as cognizant. People aren't as cognizant about that. Or Capricorn 1 has some amazing set pieces, and again, they're tied into what his central ideas. It's just, I think with Legend, they're sophisticated, but you're still able to understand them. Like you'll be able to relate to them better, because they're presented in a way which maybe is a little bit more obvious. And I think Goldsmith was forever this alchemist and this really, really kind of cerebral composer who could do things developmentally that you'd have to listen to over 200 times to start figuring out like his grand design. So that's I'm even finding that I have to listen to something 50 times and then I might finally realize, oh crap, that's an inversion of this other theme. Or someone told me, oh yeah, Capricorn 1 is basically a bitonal riff of Also Sprach Zarathustra. I'm like, holy, really? And then as soon as someone told me that, I heard it. I'm like, oh my God, I never picked that up. Ever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the dude was levels of genius. And I don't ascribe that term easily to people, but that guy's brain was thinking in ways that most people don't.
Yeah, I'm not a music, I don't read music, but I'm just a big fan of music. I do love J. Goldsmith's work, and there's a lot of scores in a way are thematic, but like for example, I always love listening to the Sand Pebbles and how he works the things in that, and also with The Wind and the Lion, I think is one of his finest works as well. Some great stuff there. And as you said, Capricorn 1 is absolutely a bombastic score, and I heard that recently about the Zarathustra as well in there, is in there, and I always thought of it also Capricorn 1 wise as an anti-establishment sort of theme too. It's not like it's supposed to be this huge like national US American the Brave anthem, but it's not. It's a corrupt anthem for that in that film, which I've always thought of it in that respect. So that shows the genius of the man. To legend, he used all that genius to produce this fantastic work, which to me was an even bigger smorgasbord of absolute riches. As I said, you can because of the themes and the sub things he produced. It is to me, it is one of the great fantasy film scores. Before Howard Shore did his wonderful work on Lord of the Rings, it's a shorter version of it. Of course, it was only 70 minutes long compared to the 10 hours of Howard Shore, but it's still one of the great fantasy film scores of forever, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I feel bad for Tangerine Dream here, because we don't talk about them at all. But you know what? That's fine. We'll get to them. We'll get to them in just a minute. But all this talk about Goldsmith is definitely warranted. I do want to play some cues for our audience here, but let's analyze them a bit and let's kind of give them some context. So I think the first cue that we're going to play is one of the first cues, or it's near the beginning of the movie. And we've been talking about it. It's the Unicorns track. It's a very lengthy track, and it plays over top of Jack's introduction and him leading Lily to see the two unicorns. But here, Lily is not content on just gazing at the magical creatures. She has to get closer, and then eventually it leads to the demise of one of them. And this cue, I love long cues that take their time to develop and play around with multiple thematic ideas. Jason mentioned that that not only this whole entire score, but this cue, it's brilliant musical storytelling. Having said that, and David mentioned it earlier, there are some things that could possibly turn off listeners, and it's the sudden interruption of electronics for the goblins. It's just this weird sound that just just as you think a piece is getting going, all these kind of weird warbly sounds pop up. And, it doesn't bother me at all because those sounds are part of the fabric of the score. But it doesn't really last long. And after, we hear those strange noises, we do get some of this patented, expansive Goldsmith string writing at the end of the cue, which is just absolutely magical. So, Jason, for the cue, the unicorns, what do you think about it?
It's, as I said before, it is one of the build-up to what's the main plot of the film, with the unicorn using his horn, and what happens in the next cue. Because the first few cues of the film just gradually builds up the tension. Without those cues, but Goldsmith's music, it'd be a very boring film. Because it seems to be happening as much on screen as it should be doing. But Goldsmith really builds up the tension of his music, and the Unicorns is a great example of that. Particularly the start when Jack and Lily meet for the first time, and he said, "I want to give I've got a problem. I want you to show you something," which she turns out to be these unicorns, and Goldsmith just builds it up. You feel in the music. I'm not talking like if David's technically, but it's, as a music fan, you can feel the tension. Something's building up. There's going to be a payoff in this cue further down the line. And when Jerry Goldsmith hits the strings towards the end of this cue, it is, I think, the only time he got as close to sheer beauty in his string writing is the trees in Medicine Man. It ranks up that little segment. It is just as beautiful as the strings in Medicine Man, and it really does catch you. And you could listen to that string section forever. And it just built, and the tension is built. And towards the end of it, it's a very brassy and very, it's like some sort of thing of don't do this in the music. Even you can have Tom Cruise is saying don't go close, Lily, and even the music is saying don't do what you're doing. You could have consequences of your actions if you do it. Even the music is telling Lily to stop and slow down and stand down. But it's such a descriptive cue. But as I said, you don't even need the visuals, as I say, to know. There's so much emotion and thought put into this music. Few composers can produce this. Robert, do you have anything to add?
Same. I echo what Jason has to say. You get the feeling that there's an unease here with what Lily is doing, yet there is still a beauty to the cue. So as she approaches, as Jason said, there's a build up there, but there's that unease, but then there's also still that beauty that's there. So it's again, what makes Jerry Goldsmith brilliant is the fact that he's able to play those two emotions at the same time and do it thematically and tonally in that cue for the unicorns.
Okay, David, let us have it.
The unease actually comes from this. There's a Goldsmith's using a minor second figure, sort of, or I see this, that kind of figure, which already kind of gives you a sense of that unease. So that's where he's using that as counterpoint against that more evocative type of theme for the unicorns, which again has that figures in more of those suspended chords and those advanced chords. So that's that segment that he sort of takes out of that theme for a smaller kind of presentation of the unicorns, just a single chord. But in more of the expanded. The other thing he's doing there too is he's using what we call thematic imitation between parts. So the violins are, and then the cellos are, they're mirroring it within the harmony. So you're getting this really luxurious, kind of very full and evocative statement that's completely, rhapsodic in a lot of ways. And it's funny because in some ways you'd think, okay, a lot of composers would kind of hold back until the end of the film or the last quarter of the last act of the film to sort of do the really magnificent kind of over the top presentation of a theme. Like they'll kind of ramp up to it, and this was, and Goldsmith has done that too. He wouldn't go completely hog wild right in the first presentation, but I think maybe the shortcomings of the film itself and the need or the desire to really exemplify these beings, the unicorns, as this otherworldly type of precious thing that represents just pure goodness. He had to really kind of sell that, because as Jason said, not really much is going on as far as they're basically just staring at stuff. It could have been a nice Hallmark commercial. So it's important for the music to establish how important that those unicorns are. So when things happen to them, there's more of a profound sense of loss.
And with that, let's hear the Unicorns, with music composed and conducted by Jerry Goldsmith and performed by the National Philharmonic Orchestra and Chorus.
Interestingly enough, too, for Darkness, I know we're not talking about him. I guess we are later on, shoot.
Yeah, we will later, yeah.
But he's using open fifths. He's not using the minor third. He's not doing that. He's doing... So he is going up to the third, but a lot of his scoring is got the male chorus and even the strings playing the open fifths, the F, it's an F minor, the FC. So it's not, again, it's almost a little ambiguous as far as the intention, because without the third, which really solidifies the chord. Remember my jazz days when we were talking about voicings, they said you can leave the fifth out. The root and the third are really what's important, and if you had like a seventh, because the overtone series, the fifth is part of the natural overtone series of a note, so you don't need to actually have the fifth in there. So it's really neat when you get rid of that third, whether it's a minor or major, you're losing your sense of tonally what is that? Is it, because that's, danger, and that's much more positive. The other thing that Goldsmith does a lot in here too is doing that, which James Horner made half his career on with that chord progression. But Goldsmith, again, his voicings are different. So Goldsmith, he's not going from the root to going down to the subdominant. He's making it. He's staying on that A flat, even though that's over an D flat major, going down to the A flat minor. So he's all these different things he's doing. The way he's voicing his chords is making things much more ambiguous, not so straightforward. Not whether it has to do with the dramatic tension or the actual tonal tension of the score. He's making things not so obvious. And actually, I just remembered this because I have to admit this. I haven't watched the film since last fall. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to this last week. It was just crazy. But I remember that line before I think darkness goes down the tubes. Like, what is light without darkness?
Yeah.
So there's that narrative thematic motif right there. There's always got to be some element of evil and good. So I think Goldsmith actually really took this to heart and provided a score that wasn't straightforwardly heroic or straightforwardly romantic or straightforwardly evil. It's kind of rests inside the cracks of that.
How much kind of fiddling around is Goldsmith doing in order to find that right tone? I mean, because like you said, that you could easily just do it simplistically, or I mean, and then once he gets that chord or that tone or that sound, does that become a conscious thing that he does to weave throughout the score, and that becomes basically the sound of the score?
I don't know. Unfortunately, I never got a chance to talk to him, so these are things only he could answer. I think my guess would be that he was so well trained and so well schooled, but also he had that innate sense of a very unique sense of scoring films. He really got under the superficial element of a film and got into the motivation of the characters, and more so than probably almost any other composer, except maybe Bernard Herrmann. They kind of got into the DNA, and they underscored the subtext in a lot of cases, rather than the literalness of what was going on. What was what was really going on with whatever was a character or a scene. And I think it was always motivated by characters. I think Goldsmith seemed in interviews I've seen was always, interestingly, he was always motivated, or he was always moved. He was always emotionally motivated, but his scores are very, very cerebral. So I think that was probably just, like I said, a side effect of his brain working differently. And he had a lot of great training too. So he was a creative unique individual artist, which had some just amazing grounding. I mean, someone told me that he had no hobbies. He basically he studied music. He lived, breathed, and ate music. He didn't play golf. He didn't do tennis. Even when he joked when he went on vacation, he was on the beach, he was reading, synthesizer manuals. So I think he was just completely entranced and just immersed in the world of music. And
yeah, no, I mean, and he even said, like, he was probably I don't know how many, there's a bunch of composers that want to become film composers now, but he famously said, he's doing exactly what he wanted to do. He grew up wanting to write music for film. And, well, why do anything else other than the thing that you love? So now we're going to talk about Tangerine Dream's contribution to this scene. Same scene that Jerry Goldsmith composed the music for, the Unicorns. I can't really find much to say about it. It's not a particularly interesting track, whereas with Goldsmith, there's like themes weaving in and out and so many interesting instrumentations. And I think with this cue, you're only hearing one melody played over and over again. It's kind of annoying. So, Jason, your thoughts on Tangerine Dream's Unicorns cue?
Personally, not a patch on Jerry Goldsmith's, unfortunately, sad to say, even though I'm a huge fan of some of their work, particularly their music on Street Hawk, and Christopher Franke turned out to be a fine composer for Babylon 5. But in this case, it's like chalk and cheese. Listening to their version of Unicorns, it felt fragmented. It didn't really score the scene as well as Goldsmith's. Goldsmith's were more descriptive. Tangerine Dream is more like a synthesized draw most of the time, with a little bit of shakuhachi and some little sample guitar, but there's nothing there really that stands out. I know Goldsmith's score without Unicorns in my head. I've now listened to that Unicorns score, Tangerine Dream's Unicorn score, now 2 or 3 times, and I can't remember it. It is just so forgettable. It may work for the score, it may work for the film for some people, but for me, it's not adding to the scene, and that's the difference between the two. In my opinion, it's nothing there I haven't heard before, and it's not really descriptive enough, in my opinion, to work on that scene as much as Goldsmith was. So to me, if it was a choice between Goldsmith and Tangerine Dream, who would do the best, Goldsmith wins by a mile.
Robert, you had a more positive reaction to Tangerine Dream's score. So what do you think of this cue compared to what Jerry Goldsmith wrote?
Again, this is it's the score that I lived with for the longest. So, while there isn't the emotional content that the Goldsmith cue has, Jason says it's not a memorable cue. Whenever I think of Legends, that's the first cue I think of. The thing for me is the Goldsmith score, hands down, wins. But again, there is that, whenever those early strains, and I will say this, I don't like what John Anderson or whoever, I think it was David Tickle or something like that, who the producer, if I heard David correctly, that he did that without Tangerine Dream knowing. It's the worst cue on the entire soundtrack. But the Unicorn theme, again, it was what I lived with. It's okay. It serves the film for what it is, but I can't, after hearing Goldsmith stuff, no, I can't honestly say that it's a favorite of mine, but it does sit in the background and it does have a bit of nostalgia for me.
David, tell us what Tangerine Dream is doing in this cue compared to what Jerry Goldsmith was doing, and how much different it is, and what's the effect that Tangerine Dream is having on the film here, again, compared to what Jerry was doing?
Well, I think there is an attempt to reflect what's going on screen a little bit. It's not quite as ambivalent as other cues. There is some kind of conscious attempt to make an association with the instrumentation. You've got that. I'm not sure why they had the shakuhachi. That's the one that Peter Gabriel used on Sledgehammer. It was a very popular sound of the day. And then, of course, most of it's the Fairlight, what we call the Fairlight flute or vocal, which the Art of Noise used a lot in whatever that song was that was popular back in the day. And they use that quite a lot throughout the score. That's a recurring sound, so I'll give them some marks at least for being slightly timbrally consistent. But as far as harmonically, you've got the... That's just basically 1, 5, 4, 5. So when Jason said it's nothing he hasn't heard before, it's because you've heard it a billion times in every rock song. So yeah, he wasn't far off. So it has a couple of stingers too, a couple of FX kind of sound effects that they throw on. It seems like they're kind of inserted in after the fact. They weren't necessarily added in a rhythmic sense that would fall in line with whatever the tempo was. It seems like it was an afterthought, like, oh, it's too scaled down, just throw something there. And it doesn't even have to necessarily coincide on a strong or weak beat. It's kind of like it's there. So who knows if they even did that? I don't even know if somebody did that after the fact. But that's what it sounds like. And that's unfortunately an element that's pervasive throughout their score, is these kind of arbitrary kind of little things, throwing things at the canvas and hoping they stick, and most of them don't. They fall off the canvas and smear along the way down.
Well, if they only had like 3 weeks to do the score, if I heard you guys correctly, what could you do in that time?
I'm not gonna exonerate or Tangerine Dream for having a short timeline. That doesn't cut it. Now, maybe compared to what they were used to at the time, yeah, maybe. I mean, they scored Sorcerer, though, without even seeing the film. William Friedkin sent them the script, and they scored it without ever seeing a frame. And it was pretty good. So, I don't know. Maybe it was rushed, it was jumbled, they didn't have a clear sense of what they were supposed to be doing. They were definitely better than that. They're not a bad group at all, and I think it's important to establish that this was a bad outing for them. It wasn't indicative of them being a bad group. I think if someone had to go with electronic, and I think I may have asked somebody on a Film Score Monthly, they were talking about it, Legend, recently, whether Ridley Scott ever thought of bringing Vangelis in, because Vangelis has that more romantic, lush sound, which would have worked pretty well, at least as a substitute for Goldsmith's score, because he still has that thematic breadth, right? Everything that Vangelis does has that lyricism, and he also has that ability to have this lush orchestration, even though he's using synths. He's using the same kind of harmonic complexity, but just with a different tonal, like a different timbral palette, which is synths, and he did it really, really well in Blade Runner and Antarctica and things like that. So I don't know. Maybe he wouldn't have been able to do it in 3 weeks. Maybe he just said, nope, can't do it. Move on.
Well, yeah, and Tangerine Dream probably was given a different set of instructions, and they were. Scheinberg was obviously trying to aim this American release towards that MTV crowd at the time. And they wanted to make this more, aimed at the teenagers. Although that doesn't make any sense when you watch the movie. But I mean, that's where this more modern sound, I would say, came from, and maybe that's what was Tangerine Dream's direction, and that's what they had to do in order to fulfill the wants and needs of the producer.
The other interesting thing I found, and this is something that Paul Andrew McLean got really right on the money in the liner notes, is that Tangerine Dream's approach was much more Eastern European folk, whereas Goldsmith was looking at more Western European folk melodies, because there are those elements that run rampant through the score, where you've got, again, those open fifths, which is, another aspect of folk music because of the tuning of strings, like those are the open strings on a violin, and you hear that in the fairy dance with Jack, and I think that's really evocative. And then you have the, which is Sing the Wee. So you've got this folk element, but it's definitely rooted in Central or Western European, almost like Mahler or Bartok would have composed. More Mahler, I would say. Taking folk elements, melodic or harmonic, and then making them more symphonic. Tangerine Dream used more Eastern European, and even for darkness, they've got sort of this weird, almost East Indian scale going on, which is bizarre, or Middle Eastern scale. And I don't think that really works against the visuals, because the visuals, clearly you feel this could have been in England or somewhere like that, not in Eastern Europe, and it has sort of a similar tone to The Keep, but The Keep seemed to be more successful with those kind of using their folk melodies and sonorities, and that it seemed much more appropriate. It doesn't seem appropriate in Legend.
And this just came to my mind, how much of an influence do you think the success of the Never-Ending Story had on changes to this movie and its score?
Musically or filmically?
Well, not so much filmically, but to get that tone, and then to think that the Never-Ending Story didn't have a traditional score and more pop score and more Eastern European score. Then is that something that might have turned the tide here?
I'm told that it was because Tangerine Dream was suggested because of their popular... Oh, we forgot about Risky Business. Yeah, when I said Tom Cruise wasn't a name before, I forgot. I completely blanked on Risky Business. That was the movie that put him on the map. It wasn't Top Gun. Sorry, my bad. But yeah, the Tangerine Dream score to Risky Business was very popular. It was a cool score too. It was definitely much more in their comfort zone with the kind of aspects of their style that really worked well, which was these kind of repeating figures that would then eventually unfold, almost like minimalism, but then they would add things over it and slightly modify it, have rhythmically interesting things, ostinatos, that were almost hypnotic. Hypnotic is a word I would use to describe a lot of Tangerine Dream's mostly seminal work. Is you've got this, you're kind of entranced, and the stuff that they were asked to do for Legend was more thematic, and that was never really their strong suit. Themes were never really their thing. They were sort of a chordally based, they do a lot of chordal work in either their regular albums or even on other soundtracks.
All right, with that, let's listen to Tangerine Dream's version of Unicorns from Legend, the American cut. And that'll do it for part 1 of this episode dedicated to the music of legend. Part 2 will be available shortly, where we dive into 3 more scenes and the use of music by Jerry Goldsmith and Tangerine Dream in the separate cuts of this film. Before we go, I want to thank David, Robert, and Jason for joining me on the program, and to Randy Andrews for letting me sit in and host his show. Soundtrack Alley's theme music was composed by Alexander Schiebel. That's it for today, and until next time, I'm Erik Woods, saying so long, take care, and happy listening wherever you are in the world. Thank you for tuning in to the Cinematic Sound Radio Network. I want to thank Tim Burton for providing his voice for all the bumpers and stingers you hear throughout the show, and to David Coscina for providing Cinematic Sound Radio's intro music. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email us at cinematicsound@yahoo.com. You can find us on social media at CinSound Radio on Twitter, at Cinematic Sound on Facebook, and from wherever you're listening to us today, please leave us a 5-star rating and a positive review. Reviews help introduce potential new listeners to the show. While you're at it, head over to TeePublic to find yourself a Cinematic Sound Radio t-shirt and support us on Patreon by going to patreon.com/cinematicsoundradio. And don't forget to check out Cinematic Sound Radio at cinematicsound.net.